This is OwlUp, where learning happens in minutes, not hours. For a deeper journey, explore all our courses at owlup.co. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to Chapter 3 of our series, Leadership Psychology, Behind the Decision. In this episode, titled Fear and Risk, Leading with Uncertainty, we'll explore how leaders can navigate the tricky waters of fear and risk and the psychological reactions that come into play. So, whether you're in a leadership position or just curious about the dynamics of decision-making, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. A Harvard study found that most executive teams admit their biggest weakness is making sense of uncertainty. Yet those same leaders are paid to make the toughest calls. Today, we drop you right into that tension. When fear spikes, risk blurs, and everyone still looks to you for direction. Fear is not just an emotion in these moments. It's a cognitive filter that distorts the information you see and the odds you think you're facing. Under pressure, your brain quietly rewrites probabilities. Threats look bigger, opportunities look smaller, and do nothing feels safer than it really is. That's loss aversion at work, not as a theory, but as a daily tax on your judgment. Yet the leaders who navigate uncertainty well don't eliminate fear. They learn to treat it as a data point, not a decision rule. They pair their intuitions with deliberate checks, slowing down just enough to question their first read of the situation, and designing teams and systems that surface more signal than noise. In this episode, we'll unpack how to lead when your nervous system wants to hide, but your role requires you to move. Most leaders never get formal training in this terrain. They're promoted for past certainty, then judged on how they handle present ambiguity. That gap shows up in subtle ways. Meetings where no one names the risk everyone feels, projects that quietly shrink in ambition, safe plans that slowly erode competitiveness. Fear doesn't just live in individuals. It accumulates in processes, metrics, and stories about how things are done here. The real leverage is learning to read those signals, noticing when caution is wisdom versus when it's your organization's nervous system overfiring, and calling it prudence. Most leaders meet uncertainty first in their bodies, not their spreadsheets. Tight jaw, shallow breathing, urge to either clamp down or escape. That's the threat system switching on. The mistake is assuming you can lead well while pretending that system isn't running. Start with your own physiology because it hijacks your time horizon. Under threat, attention collapses to the next hour, day, or quarter. You overweight immediate pain and underweight long-term positioning. Notice when your language shrinks to right now and this quarter only. It's often a sign your nervous system is doing the talking. The leadership move is not to tough it out, but to expand the time frame of the conversation. Explicitly ask, what does this look like in 2 to 3 years if we do nothing? If we act boldly but thoughtfully? Next, understand that fear loves false certainty. When anxiety rises, leaders often reach for the comfort of binary stories. This will either be a disaster or a slam dunk. Real uncertainty is usually more like a probability distribution. Practically, that means forcing multiple futures into the room. Best case, base case, worst case, with concrete triggers that would move you from one scenario to another. This gives your team permission to act without pretending you can guarantee outcomes. At the team level, fear shows up as silence. People know where the real fragility is: key dependencies, brittle processes, untested assumptions, but they quickly learn what is sayable. Psychological safety is not about being nice. It's about making it emotionally inexpensive to talk about the thing that could sink you. Notice who edits themselves before speaking, who always agrees with the highest paid person, who only raises issues after meetings. Those are risk signals, not personality quirks. Finally, uncertainty punishes lone heroes and rewards design checks. Build simple, repeatable questions into your major decisions. What are we afraid of here? Where could this fail in a boring, avoidable way? What small experiment would buy us more information cheaply? Over time, those questions become a quiet infrastructure that keeps fear as input, not steering wheel. When a market shock hits, you can often see three patterns in leaders around you. One clamps down, cutting every non-essential initiative. Another doubles down blindly on a pet bet. A third pauses just long enough to separate fear from facts, then moves in smaller, testable steps. 6 months later, that third leader usually hasn't been braver in temperament, just more deliberate in how they convert anxiety into hypotheses. You can do this in surprisingly tactical ways. In a product review, instead of asking, "Are we confident?" ask, "Where does this fail first, and what tiny probe would expose that?" In budgeting, rather than slashing across the board, ring-fence one or two bolder experiments and pre-decide under what data you'll kill, pivot, or scale them. In one-to-ones, invite your reports to rank their private confidence in a plan from 1 to 10, then tell you what would move their score by 1 point. Over time, these micro-moves teach your team that voicing edge doubts isn't disloyal. It's part of how you steer. AI, climate, and geopolitical shifts will keep raising the uncertainty floor. Leaders who thrive won't just tolerate fog. They'll design portfolios of bets the way savvy investors balance risk. Some safe, some speculative, all monitored. Expect boards to ask not only, "What's the plan?" but "How fast can you replan?" Metrics like adaptation speed, learning rate, and decision cycle time will sit beside revenue. Cultures that rehearse disruption before it arrives will treat volatility as routine, not exceptional. Your challenge this week: before any major decision, pause for 90 seconds and name, out loud or on paper, the specific fear in play and the concrete risk you're actually taking. Then, like adjusting an audio mix, deliberately turn up one neglected signal: upside, alternatives, or long-term impact. Notice how your choices, and your team's questions, shift. This was OwlUp, your daily step forward. To keep learning with structured courses and more insights, go to owlup.co. Until tomorrow!